I'm going to introduce our next presenter, Mr. Scott Faris. Scott is the CEO of Infleqtion, previously called Quanta, a global leader in developing and delivering enabling quantum components and systems since 2007. He's got a great presentation for you. Clicker is over here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
All right, thank you. And if anyone wants a seat, mine is available and for sale. In this world, you raise money any way. You raise money any way you can in this world right now. So let me go back out and pull my slides up. I also come from a Mac world, so fingers crossed that everything translates here quite nicely. Here we go. All right. Again, my name is Scott Faris. I'm the CEO of Infleqtion, formerly known as Cold Quanta, for those of you who've been in the quantum industry for a while. I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit. We're going to really talk about manufacturing today. And we're not going to talk about manufacturing a false future, which has been a lot of the challenge in the quantum hype, but really the practical challenge of getting devices, systems to scale in the near term. And as we've heard at the conference with the opening symposium this morning, quantum is more than compute. It's sensing, it's networking, and the reality is that the real near-term to market opportunities fall on the side of the portfolio of sensing, and there's a wide variety of sensors. There's a wide variety of other applications. And for the last really 15 years, and we've been around as a company for 2007, and I think we are at a really important point in the quantum industry as a whole, where all the talk has been about research. How do we do more research? How do we scale research? How does everybody get into research? And the reality is that we also have to think about how do we build scalable enterprises? And that's a challenge unto its own. To give you a sense of this, that in 2022, there was about $450 billion of venture capital dollars deployed, and 1.4 billion of that went to the quantum industry. As you all know, this is hard, this is extremely expensive, and we haven't even gotten into the manufacturing game. And so the industry, government needs to start thinking about not only research, but how do we start aligning our processes, our systems, our funding to get technology out of the lab and into the field, but not just for field trials, but how do you build hundreds of systems? How do you build thousands of systems? And this is an underlying issue that faces the sensor industry, it faces the quantum industry, and I'll take somewhat of an exception into there is need for some level of vertical integration in this industry. Because, and as I'll talk about in a second, is that the talent is spread too thin, the capital is spread too thin, and if we're taking a pot of money and we're dividing it up among lots and lots of people, not much happens. A lot of little cool things happen, but not meaningful things. And so, again, I say this from the perspective of we've been at this since 2007. We've built an organization globally now, 230 employees. We'll probably have close to 280 employees within the next 6 months. We operate globally, like I said, US, multiple locations, UK, very rapidly growing organization in the UK. We'll be at over 50 full-time employees in the UK by the end of this year. And so we kind of have the perspective of building parts and components for many people, perhaps in this room, that have been doing quantum research as Cold Quanta, what we now call Cold Quanta Labs. And so we have somewhat of a perspective on how do we think about getting, again, from the lab to prototypes into production. Again, and our view of the world is, again, we're vertically integrated. This is full stack in terms of full stack. We have software, but we go really, and we view everything we do from the component level up. And as I like to say, we deal in the world of atoms and ions. We don't make atoms and ions any better. They're intrinsically, they are what they are. They're the best that Mother Nature has to give us. They're quite predictable. They're very uniform. They're the best palette to play with in quantum. The challenge is we tend to always make them worse. And again, our motto in the company is we have a simple business, is we shoot lasers at atoms. Everything we do is shooting lasers at atoms. So the atoms are great. The lasers, the rest of the system, the systems engineering is wherein the problem lies. And there's a lot of effort to again build prototypes, but if you start to extrapolate this, as you think about how you scale things as simple as we call photonic prisms. The volumes aren't big, they're research scales right now. How do we move to production scale of these types of devices? Because until we start to address those issues, we're not going to have practical quantum systems in the field that work in the real world at price points and form factors that the market really needs to be able to deploy the technology at scale. So we talk a little about that. The big challenge as I see it is that we need to really focus on solving some of these practical issues today of just fundamental manufacturing problems. And as I see it, the challenge has been that too much of what's been going on is more research, more research, more research. And while we sell into the research market, I'm very excited about that. But we also now need to start thinking about how do we start building products? How do we start taking something and there's a component in part of our supply chain where the entire supply chain is one person that works inside an organization. And for those of you who have any familiarity with the photonics and optics world, this is not an uncommon problem. For years, the telecom industry was built on 2 or 3 people that grew a certain crystal. Right? And they were literally, I've seen examples of this, they were indentured and chained to beds in crystal growing stations. They'd have to sit there for weeks while the crystals were growing and hope that a train didn't come by and vibrate the building. Again, these are fundamental supply chain issues that, again, the telecom industry has been able to address, but they are barriers to scaling a lot of the quantum applications. And we need to get real about how we start addressing these, or we're not going to have computers that work at scale. We're not going to have sensors that can be shipped in volume. And so this is really part of my message today for those that are policymakers, for those that are in the industry, is that we do need to start thinking about moving beyond research and into quantum. And so, as I said about this, the landscape today is lots of research activity. And in my view, things are spread too thin. The single largest limiting resource in this industry is people. It's not money. And again, we're all raising money. And there's money out there. But again, as we heard in the workshops yesterday, it's people. There's a handful of people that really understand the high-level physics, and there's not a lot of people that run into this industry because it's intimidating, quite frankly, to walk into a room of ammo physicists and tell them that they're wrong because they're not thinking about a systems engineering problem. So, again, I kind of equivalent to this is in about 700 to 900 little quantum companies running around, raising research dollars, trying to raise venture capital dollars. If you look at that, again, this funding of roughly $1.5 billion spread among 900 little companies, again, there's the have and have-nots. There's lots of little companies that get a little bit of money. There's a handful of companies that raise a lot of money. I would argue that it's very skewed in terms of the number of companies that raise money. But again, this is a very fragmented industry. And again, the purpose of this conference is to talk about how we collaborate, which we do need to do. But I also argue that we also need consolidation. We need to be able to consolidate the number of private companies in the space, in the space. Because, again, if I look at these 700 little companies, there's 700 great ideas. And as I like to, in my experience, is every one of those companies has what's called the golden screw. We solved the core problem. We're the foundation for making all of this happen. And while there are some golden screws out there, the reality is this is a systems engineering problem. How do we bring these technologies together to build a product? How do we bring these products together to build system-level solutions? And so this requires cooperation among these 700 little companies. And as I like to say, how do we get everybody on the same color of equity? And there's a precedent for this. This happened in the telecom industry in the late 90s. When we moved from analog to digital infrastructure. At that time, the internet data traffic broke the copper networks in the world. And we had to reinvent our infrastructure to handle the massive amount of data. And in 1999, there were a handful of companies that came together. One was a company called JDS Uniphase, and it just consolidated the supply chain. It consolidated the 600 little optics companies out there trying to solve these problems and delivered at scale. They delivered a box. They delivered a box to the carriers. And I'm arguing that in this industry, in the quantum industry, we need to start thinking about how do we get a handful of companies that can build boxes to deliver to the primes, that can deliver to the enterprise carriers for the types of products that need to be in the marketplace. And again, so the challenge here is that scaling is highly disconnected right now. Again, we have pockets. We have pockets of looking at hardware that's not designed to scale. Again, a lot of the research funding is prove to me you can build something that works, but it's not built with regard that I have to make 10 of them. I have to make 100 of them. And my company is a prime example of that. We've brought in $170 million of government funding to build prototypes. And as I started to push my team, I was like, well, what if we built 10 or what if we built 100? it's blank stares. Well, that's not what the mission was. The mission was to prove you could build a prototype. And so we have to start in the research side, how do we think about doing research that's scalable, that can lead to making things in volume? We need to focus on solutions, not technologies. This was part of the opening presentation this morning from Kristen at E&Y, is what is the customer experience? At the end of the day, they don't care whether it's quantum or not. They care that they get a better answer. And they care that the box works and it's the right price point. And so, again, this is applying some of the business principle to this. And again, I think the thing that's been unique to me is I call it this too many smart people in the room challenge. Again, this is an intimidating industry. Inside our own company, we get the hand. I call it the hand. And we bring our systems engineers in, and the AMO physicists put their hands up and say, oh, you poor child, you don't understand the physics, so please leave the room. Right? Well, no, they don't understand the physics. They don't need to understand the physics. They're systems engineers. They're there to take the physics and make it into a real product. This is a big issue, and I've talked to a lot of other CEOs that they see the hand go up in the room when product people come in and start to work on things. So, this is, from my view, how do we start scaling the scaling mountain? Right? This is a big mountain, and it goes on in parallel with research. First big point, and this has been a topic people have talked about, is we need demand signals from customers. The first customers are the government. They've been funding the research. They have to start funding productization. So demand signals there. We need to focus on scalable modalities. Not all of these quantum modalities scale the same way. And so, again, I saw this in the LiDAR industry, and we had lots of modalities competing against each other, and then finally 2 modalities won, the industry consolidated. So, again, this also ties into consolidating the supply chain. And then lastly is how do we build championship organizations? How do we build the New York Yankees of quantum? How do we build the Patriots? I mean, we need organizations with leadership teams that know how to scale, they know how to win, they know how to deliver time and time again. And it's not 600 little teams playing Little League ball. We need big organizations that can understand how to do this, and we have to build them from within. People in this room, people at this conference have to build these types of companies. So what does this look like, real practical? Going from, these are the types of products that we're starting to build today. This is what we call convergence. Everything's miniaturized, everything's going down. We're now building our own lasers, we're building our own photonic chips, we're building our own prism devices. This is all headed towards integration. And what does this ultimately look like in products? And so these are products that are going into the market right now. So Ticker is our precision time frequency products. The top box, this is what I made this slide last night, so this is the CEO last minute slide. That's why it's not as nice as the others. But the answer is ultimately that clocks, and we've heard a lot about clocks so far today, they need to be chip scale. And what that bottom clock is, that is a clock that is a several $1,000s kind of price point target clock that exceeds active hydrogen maser performance that right now is a big box that costs $500,000. That's what quantum at scale looks like, is we have to deliver products in those form factors at those price points. We're doing the same thing in the spectrum market. This is our Skywire program. We're actually fielding basically quantum RF systems. These are fieldable systems. We've come off of 3 large government demos after the last 3 weeks. We're taking that form factor and we're putting it in the field, and it's working in real time in really ugly conditions. And so these quantum technologies are starting to make their way to the market, but the supply chain behind it is ugly, and it needs to be resolved. And again, it's going to require leadership from industry and leadership from government to start to address these supply chain issues. Lastly, we'll talk a little more about this. You'll hear more on this. We're leading an effort on this charge we call our QNexus project. Which is a quantum fab that we're pulling together. This is a several $100 million investment that we're stepping up to make to start scaling these technologies in an end-to-end scalable production organization. So more on this over the next couple months, but this is what quantum at scale looks like from a manufacturing perspective. With that, thank you.
One question. If anyone has a question for Mr. Faris.
I knew you would. So I like the analogy with telecom.
Yeah.
Telecom did a lot of these, went from these giant to elaborate things to deploy. The challenge is telecom had big market pull. There's something like 10 million DFE lasers selling to telecom every year. Is it a chicken and egg thing? Do you feel like?
So there is market pull. I think we're starting to see enterprise market pull, particularly because of AI and the impact on data centers. And if you start thinking about timing precision products in data centers, particularly if you can start to do the size down, scale down. There's huge performance gains you can start unlock in data centers. Same thing applies on the QRF. To be able to use spectrum in ways that was not possible before, we're already starting to see big demand signals. So it does actually have a telecom analogy to it. But again, it's also getting over the believability factor. Yeah. No one thought this was possible. No one thought that you could build a quantum RF system and basically put it in a dirty, nasty, ugly battlefield and actually have it work. And we've now demonstrated that. We've done that 3 times. And so now that people see the technology is real, the real question becomes, it is a chicken and egg, is how do you make it small and inexpensive? And so that's where I think there's a lot of analogies in the LiDAR industry, which I know you're familiar with as well, is that you've got to get the customers to buy in and be part of that future roadmap.
It's always a question of what is it going to take to get there, and then what's the ROI and the timeline for the ROI.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the strategy we have is everything that we build from clocks up to computer, and talk about computers today, or computers follow the same roadmap, are built on the same components. And so what's unique about our strategy is that we've commonized a handful of components, laser components and other components that we build everything from. And where this plays off for us on our compute is we have more shots on goal of shooting at atoms than anybody in the industry because we build so many things. And all that learning is really what's underlying our big effort in compute, which again, we don't really talk about a lot because we don't need to. We've got a large compute team, it's focused, but it's benefiting from all this learning and will benefit from the manufacturing.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.